Hello, my name is Mary Lesher, and I'm a Public Programs Coordinator with the Smithsonian American Art Museum's Renwick Gallery. Today we're going to learn about Rosemaling, a Norwegian style of decorative painting that includes lots of bright colors and stylized flowers. We'll learn a few of the brushstrokes and techniques that give Rosemaling its unique look. For this craft, you will need a wooden coaster, paint in a variety of colors, paint brushes, water to wash your brushes, paper towels, and a practice sheet. To get started, we're going to practice some of the brushstrokes that make Rosemaling unique and have its beautiful look. So a few of the best tips that I have are to make sure you wet your brush in advance. You want to use a nice round brush so it creates the shapes easily. And what you're going to do is load up your paintbrush, and then you really want to let the paint do the work. So I'm trying to make a beautiful little swoosh right here. So I'm going to start, leave a nice heavy set of paint right there, pull around, and then taper off and leave a nice finish. It takes some practice, but you'll get used to it over time. Start, pull up, and if you can, at the very end, taper off by twisting your brush, because that'll give you a cleaner end to your line. So I'm starting, leaving a nice heavy head there, and pulling up so I have a beautiful swish. You also are going to make a lot of dots and dashes and small things. So while you're doing that, you want to make sure you're using just a little bit of pressure so you create the right size of dot. And start small, you can always add more paint if you need to. So here I'm just going to practice making slightly different sizes and adding more paint as I go to make larger dots. Many of these techniques are not going to come naturally to you. They take a lot of time and effort to develop. So if it doesn't feel intuitive, fake it till you make it. You can use small, precise brushstrokes to create similar shapes that well-practiced Rosemaling artists can do with one swipe of their brush. So now that I've practiced a little bit, I am going to start working on my coaster. So to start, I have my pre-painted coaster and I've already traced my stencil on it. And I'm going to add the first layer of my design. Rosemaling usually involves multiple layers of paint that build up together with different colors to make it really unique and vibrant. So I'm starting with my base layer of paint, and I'm going to create this center flower. So again, leaving a lot of paint at the end and then pulling through. Remember to reload your brush with paint frequently so that you're always getting those heavy paint lines. If you need to, you can fill in a little bit in places where your paint didn't cover everything. We're just going to use small strokes to add a little bit of extra paint to those areas. And remember that it doesn't have to be perfect because we're going to add 2 more layers of paint onto this flower to really make it pop and give it a fun Rosemaling look. So I've done my flower, and now I'm going to work on the little leaves around the edge. This is where I'm going to use that technique of pulling my paint around and leaving a little bit of a swoosh in there. So I'm going to start with this darkest color, adding my paint on, pulling up and around, and trying to leave a nice clean taper at the end. And I achieve that by trying to turn my brush as I go so that I'm pulling up in a way that leaves a nice solid path. Once you've done that all the way around, added all 4 of your leaves and the little extra rosettes at the top, give it time to dry. And now we're moving on to our second layer of paint. We're using all the same techniques and just going to add more layers of color to really enhance this design. So I'm going to start with my main flower in the center. I'm adding a slightly brighter shade of red, often called Norwegian red or vermilion. to really make these petals pop. So you can see here that it's okay that some of these center areas don't have as much coverage of paint because I'm going right over them with this next layer. The hard part here is remembering which shade of red you are on. So once I've made my way around this central flower here, we're going to add a little extra layer of petals to these small buds that are on the edge. It can often be helpful in Rosemaling to brace your wrist or your hand against the table or use a support to help give you the stability you need to make those nice, clean brush strokes. And now I'm going to add the next layer onto my leaves around the side. So let's use this next brightest color. I'm again going to start in the middle and pull up to make little swoops. This time I'm keeping my strokes a little bit smaller so that they fit kind of inside the design that I did before. Once that layer dries, it's time to add our final details. And if some of those really specific shapes and movements that give Rosemaling its kind of beautiful designs are harder for you, this is a spot where you can kind of cheat and make it really look like Rosemaling by adding lots of little details without having to learn everything perfectly. So I'm gonna start by really adding a last little pop of color to this central flower here, adding this really, really bright orange red. And now I'm gonna let that dry while I add some more details onto the flowers or the leaves on the side over here. So I'm just gonna add some more, again, bright colors, giving this just a little bit more detail and extra oomph. It's a very Norwegian Midwestern thing to say. You can also try a Rosemaling practice where you put multiple colors of paint on your paintbrush at the same time to give it a more blended look. That is something you're going to want to practice first. I don't do it because I've never been able to do it successfully, and I can achieve a similar look just by stacking my layers of paint. And now I'm going to add the little dots and details that are really going to make this design special. So starting in the corners, starting small with my dots and getting bigger as we go. And I'm going to stack multiple colors in here, making space for additional dots. If your spacing isn't just perfect, that's okay. It'll all come together. Now that that last layer of paint on the center of my flower is mostly dry, I'm going to go ahead and add the center of my beautiful flower here. There we go. And then I'm going to use a little bit of this color as well and add it to each of my little buds over here. Okay, and then our last piece of the design is to add any remaining details to the center and to our leaves. Again, making sure we're making nice, precise dots. And you'll end up with a beautiful rose mold coaster like this. If you want to use this to hold a cool beverage, I'd recommend putting a layer of clear spray paint over it just to seal it in so that your paint doesn't go anywhere. You could also put a magnet on the back, hang it on your fridge, or put it into a shadow box and hang it on your wall. Thank you for joining me today to learn about Rosemaling. I hope to see you at a future Handy Hour.